Hey everyone, I'm Lauren Conlin, and welcome to Pop Crime TV's The Outlier podcast. Before we get started, don't forget to like and subscribe wherever you watch or wherever you listen. I would really appreciate it. But today, we are going to be stepping into a really disturbing case, a chilling tale from Waterbury, Connecticut, which is in my neighborhood, the tri-state area. It's a very small town slash city nestled between Hartford and New York City. This is the case of this so-called house of horrors and a 32-year-old man's desperate bid for freedom, and a community feeling very shaken and shocked amid all of this. This is the story of 2 Blake Street, or the Connecticut House of Horrors, and this mugshot right next to me. This is Kimberly Sullivan. More on her a bit later. And just to forgo my professionalism for a minute, this woman looks like she literally licks the bag, the bottom of her crack bag, okay? And it looks like she let a 4-year-old do her makeup, and I'm being nice. I mean, I could just go off on this woman, but let's get into this very chilling story. Picture this: a quiet street in Waterbury, Connecticut, neatly trimmed homes, kids' toys scattered across the yards, and neighbors who wave at cars as cars drive by. And Blake Street was just that until February of 2025. Everything changed. On February 17th, 2025, firefighters rushed to 2 Blake Street after a frantic 911 call reported a fire. And this seemed just like a routine fire at first, but what they found inside would reveal a nightmare spanning over 2 decades. And I am still in shock. I mean, when you hear about stories like these, you become amazed at the resilience of certain people. And I always find myself asking questions like, man, could I have survived this? I don't know. But meanwhile, before we get into what exactly it was, the reactions of neighbors in the area, they were shocked, and they are still, I guess, very tired of the media attention because they are not used to anything like this going on in their very small town. And I looked up a couple interviews with neighbors. There was one neighbor, 39-year-old Marvin McCullough. He had lived in the neighborhood for about 8 years, and he told reporters about the family at 2 Blake Street, which, by the way, this house is a worn 2-story white house, old looking with pale blue trim. And Marvin said, yeah, there was Kimberly Sullivan. She was apparently a quote unquote stepmother, and you'll see why. She did have a husband who died in 2024, and then she had 2 daughters, and that was it. They came and went, they kept to themselves, all was normal. But Marvin never saw any other signs of anyone else living there besides Kimberly Sullivan, her 2 daughters, and then previously her late husband. So, yeah, there was no sign of any of this alleged horror that police say was unfolding behind those walls. What kind of horror? Okay. Well, Kimberly Sullivan, who is 57 years old, going on 87 years old per that picture, she was arrested on March 12th, 2025, charged with kidnapping, assault, and cruelty. Kimberly has a 32-year-old stepson, and he told police he had been locked in that house for over 20 years, since he was 11 years old, enduring captivity, abuse, and starvation. And that fire that police were called to that night in February was set by this 32-year-old man. He escaped that home and captivity by setting a fire in his tiny room, we'll call it a room for now, with printer paper and hand sanitizer, which is, God, I mean, I can't even imagine. It's like, and you'll see this tiny room. I'm going to show pictures later, but you really do risk your life by doing something like this. But desperate times. So let's rewind to that night, February 17th, 2025. Waterbury Deputy Fire Chief Bob Stoker. He was the incident commander, and he's got nearly 40 years on the job, and he has seen it all, or so he thought. And yeah, I mean, this does sound like the opening of a Dateline, right? In all my years, I had never seen anything this bad. But I think this is true. This is something to be said because you have all of these different incidents that we watch on Dateline, but it's all across the country. And it's true. These small towns, these small cities, they are not used to disturbing incidents like this. So Engine 11 rolled up, and when a firefighter emerged from the smoky house, they were carrying a soot covered figure. And Deputy Chief Bob Stoker, he thought that it was maybe a young teen. He thought that, he saw the body was a little bit longer, but, at a closer look, he realized it wasn't a teen, but he was shocked because this figure was 5'9" and weighed just 68 pounds. Apparently, this figure was found emaciated and curled up under a kitchen table. So, firefighter Gabriel Goya scooped him up and carried him out the front door. And Captain John Paul Oldham had also told NBC Connecticut he also thought that this was a child. And then he slowly realized, oh my gosh, this is no kid at all. So the survivor is put in the back of an ambulance. And apparently, he told first responders, quote unquote, I wanted my freedom. And they were stunned. The fire chief actually said, quote, over my 37-year career, we've had plenty of arson fires, but this is the first time I have ever heard that someone lit a fire to be rescued from confinement. I mean, I think it's genius, but hope at some point he does an interview, most likely with Dr. Phil. But I hope for now, yeah, he's getting the help he needs. So anyway, yeah, imagine this: a 32-year-old man allegedly trapped in an 8 by 9 storage space. That was his room within the house. 8 by 9 feet. That's nothing. That's literally smaller than a prison cell in some cases. So there was no heat, no AC, and locks on the outside of the door. So the only way to escape was risking burning alive, starting a fire in that tiny room, just hoping that police and the fire department would get there on time. So it's crazy to think about. So, police detective Steve Brownell, I'm going to also read from the original affidavit later, which is very, very triggering. So, just get ready for that. But Steve Brownell, he was also there, and he said that this man's story never wavered. They searched the house immediately, and they found a charred door with locks on the outside, corroborating every word this man says. And Brownell said, you see this and it sticks with you. He said the man told him that his stepmother, Kimberly Sullivan, kept him in that room, fed him barely anything, and let him out occasionally for chores or once or twice a year. But he said also he remembers being let out when he was 12 to go trick or treating. And I thought this was really, I don't know. I don't even know if I should call it sweet. It's sad. It's ironic almost. But the last time he was let out to go trick or treating, he was 12 years old and he was dressed as a firefighter. And he told police this. So, I mean, it was firefighters who saved his life. But photos were released by Waterbury police through a FOIA request by NBC Connecticut to show the squalor inside to Blake Street. I mean, it was filthy. A filthy staircase, stained, obviously fire damaged, and that staircase led to the second floor where he was held. There was a bedroom with a bed buried underneath all this disgusting junk, walls smoked, water stains, windows actually boarded up, another cluttered, very grimy bedroom and bathroom, items strewn across the floor. There's another shot, a door frame with an outside lock, again, charred from the fire. The rooms were just disgusting. And you know what? I'm going to play this clip from NBC Connecticut and show you some of the photos they obtained. It's horrific. But let me get this right now. I'll share this tab and I will play this.
These photos released by Waterbury Police paint a picture of the conditions
Ugh.
inside this home on Blake Street. Investigators say it's where Kimberly Sullivan held her 32-year-old stepson in captivity. Here you can see the staircase that leads to the second floor where police say the man was being held. There's also a picture of a lock. The victim told police he was locked in a room from the outside.
Very sad and sickening, just disturbing.
There's also photos of a bedroom and bathroom all cluttered with items, and then the kitchen, where first responders...
I mean, I also have to say, like, 2 other daughters lived in this house and Kimberly lived in this house. It's so freaking gross. Oh my gosh.
Say they found the victim.
And the victim was called up in a little ball underneath the table. And then I went up to him, scooped him up, and then just took him right out the front door.
I saw the mother and at the time what I thought was a child in the kitchen. He was in the fetal position in the kitchen.
Former Fairfield Police Chief Gary McNamara says these pictures will support what the victim has told investigators about life inside the home.
A lot of these crimes are hidden from view and they're hidden from the public. This gives us a pretty clear picture of what life was like inside that house.
We're also getting a look at photos from what appears to be the Waterbury Police Evidence Room. You can see a door wrapped in police tape propped up next to shelving with what looks to be evidence bags. We also have photos of an apparent door frame that had a lock on it. Neighbors say this only adds to the horror they've felt since the arrest earlier this month.
I don't understand how anyone could live like that.
We did reach out to Sullivan's attorney about the photos. He responded saying,
and sorry, that was a serious lock. When I first saw that lock, I was like, oh, okay, I get it. Because clearly I'm thinking to myself, can you push the door down? Can you do something to get out? Does it have to be a fire? And now you can see how insulated that was, how he really did risk everything by setting that fire.
No comment. Sullivan will return to court on April 22nd. Reporting in Waterbury, Jeremy Chen, NBC Connecticut News.
Okay, so we'll remove that for a minute. You heard that, kind of skipped ahead. Kimberly is due back in court on April 22nd, but I am not done going over all of this. So there's a lot of questions, How did this go unnoticed for 20 years? How was this man able to be locked in this room and nobody noticed? Well, about half a mile away, there is an old elementary school, Barnard Elementary School. Now it's an adult education center. And it does hold, this elementary school, it holds some very frustrating answers. Former principal Tom Pannoni told NBC Connecticut that his team actually called the Connecticut Department of Children and Family Services at least 20 times decades ago, worried about a student. And who was that student? The survivor. So the agency said they've, quote, looked extensively at their records and they found nothing. And unsubstantiated cases get expunged after 5 years. That is so frustrating. And look, we know that the system is not perfect, but it's becoming just quite clear that this stuff happens more and more frequently, where there are calls being made. They say they looked into it, but yeah, they're understaffed, they're busy, they're overworked, and these things happen. It's horrible. So a former classmate, Brendalis Medina, now 31, she remembers this man from 4th grade, and this breaks my heart. She said she sat next to a timid small boy, pale, yellow teeth, dirty clothes that didn't fit, a stutter when he spoke. He was always hungry, begging classmates for food, and some kids made fun of him because he was different. And she said when she heard about the man who escaped the fire, it clicked for her. And she said she got chills all over her body and she couldn't sleep that night. And then she just replayed everything in her head. She said that she remembers him crying beside her. She remembered sharing her lunch with him and just lingering at school or in class when others would just book it and run home. He would have his head on his desk. And she said it was very apparent that something was wrong now that she looks back on things. There was also an interview with her cousin as well, who's now a reverend, who said that he felt the same weight. And the fact that people will notice these things and not necessarily say anything at the time, that seems to be affecting a lot of people in the area. And it's not it's nobody's fault, right? It's no one's fault, but I think that it's a sign that we should be vigilant. And it starts with us to notice certain things. And even if we're wrong, I mean, it happens, but better safe than sorry. So it's better to say something. So the Waterbury police chief, his name is Fernando Spagnolo, and he also feels horrible. He said, quote, to NBC Connecticut, quote, "Our job is to protect people. And in this case, we couldn't." So Kimberly Sullivan, she pled not guilty on March 28th to charges like first-degree assault and second-degree kidnapping. And this is crazy. This is wild. I'm like, what the hell is this? Freaking Cinderella? Her attorney insists that she's innocent and this man was properly cared for, not prevented from leaving. And he pinned it on this man's late father who died in 2024. I mean, that's where I'm kind of like, is this Cinderella? Seriously? And the man's half sibling, she also spoke out. They did not have a relationship. They shared the same biological mother, but she said she had been looking for them the whole time. And she kind of said what we were all thinking here. Like, obviously, this guy's stepsisters had to have known what was going on, and they didn't say anything either. I mean, should they be charged? I would like to know. I would like to know how old they are. I would like to know I think they're a little bit older. But yeah, I think they should be charged as well if they knew. So I am going to go over the initial arrest affidavit and interview from the police report, but I do want to issue a trigger warning because this is very, very disturbing. So I'm sharing this tab right here. Let me add it to the stage. Okay. The affiant, Detective Steve Brownell. Okay, we don't have to go through all this. He's a member of the Waterbury Police Department. He has 20 years of police training and experience. Okay, the victim shall be referred to as male victim 1. So his identity will be redacted. Here we go. On 2/17/25, the Waterbury Police Department received a complaint for an active fire in Waterbury, Connecticut, filed by Kimberly Sullivan. Oh my gosh, I can't believe she literally looks like she's 80. I'm sorry. I can't believe she was born in 1968. Officers Martinage and Intezeri, I probably butchered that last name. They were dispatched to the scene as well as the Waterbury Fire Department. Upon arrival, the fire department was already on scene and began working on the active structure fire. The officer observed that the fire department made entry into the residence and removed a party, later identified as MV1. He was born in 1993, and he was immediately brought to an ambulance for medical treatment. The officer initially reported that MV1's stepmother, Kimberly Sullivan, was standing outside and was uninjured. The fire department worked the fire. They were able to extinguish the fire, which appeared to be mostly contained to the second floor. Multiple rooms on the second floor had heavy smoke, heavy fire, and water damage from that. The officer checked on MV1 in the ambulance where he was being treated for smoke inhalation. Upon viewing MV1, the officer observed that MV1 was extremely emaciated. His hair was matted and unkempt. He was very dirty, and his teeth all appeared to be rotten. He was conscious and alert, although he was having difficulty speaking due to the smoke inhalation. MV1 reported to the officer that he intentionally started the fire in his room on the second floor using a lighter, hand sanitizer, and paper because he, quote, wanted his freedom. He stated he had been locked in that house his entire life. He said he had been held captive at the residence since he was approximately 11 years old. He specifically mentioned that his stepmother, Kimberly Sullivan, keeps him locked inside his bedroom as there is a lock outside of the bedroom door. He was transported to St. Mary's for treatment before being transferred as his condition worsened, and he was listed as being in critical condition due to smoke inhalation. Oh my gosh, that's so sad. All right, I'm skipping through this. Detective Pesci then introduced himself. Oh, no. Okay, sorry. I'm going to go back. Upon arrival, Detective Pesci was updated on scene by the officers of MV1's conditions related to the fire and just his general appearance. So Detective Pesci is getting the rundown. So then he goes and he introduces himself and speaks briefly to Kimberly Sullivan, who was on scene in a vehicle with her daughter and her daughter's boyfriend. Sullivan reported to Detective Pesci that she didn't know what happened and that she woke up to the smoke and went to male victim 1's room. Sullivan stated she went to MV1's room and saw a large amount of fire in his doorway. Sullivan stated that MV1 was saying something about a TV and that she was screaming at him to get outside of the room. Sullivan stated that she guessed he ran through the fire because he did end up outside the room. Detective Pesci asked if MV1 was diagnosed with any mental conditions, and Kimberly stated that, quote, he has a lot of problems, but isn't diagnosed with any conditions, as MV1's father was against using doctors. Sullivan stated that she has brought MV1 to a psychiatrist a few times, and that MV1 has mentioned hurting himself in the past. Detective Pesci asked Sullivan if MV1 was locked inside his room, and she stated that his door is not locked and he has free reign of the house. Okay, that's a weird thing to say. He has free reign of the house. I think you could just say no, his door is not locked. Imagine someone asked me about my kids and I'm like, oh no, they have free reign of the house. The hell are you saying, woman? Okay. While the fire department was actively on scene dealing with the fire scene, Inspector Sevilla and Detective Pesci did a cursory walkthrough in Waterbury to ascertain the origin and cause of the fire. Okay, they go to the second floor bedroom. They see there's various burnt up papers and debris. I don't know why I said debris. Sorry. I'm reading and I'm zoning out. Okay. I want to get to, okay. At this point, it looks like the investigation is early and they see the latch that appears to match up on the door with the location of the fire and the lock. And it looks like Kimberly refused to meet with Detective Pesci and stated that she has spoken with an attorney and will not be speaking to police. Okay, so girlfriend knows what's going on at this point. Okay. Once MV had recovered to a point he could speak with investigators, 2 interviews were conducted by detectives. The first was on 2/21/2025 by Detective Pesci, and the second was conducted by Detective Brownell on 3/6/25. Both interviews were conducted at the medical facility that MV1 was recovering at. Each interview was audio and video recorded utilizing the police department body-worn cameras. In the 3 hours that MV1 was interviewed, he provided details of the evolution and his life over the past 20 years that amounted to a life of captivity, abuse, and starvation. This is so sad. I'm going to go over it. Maybe not line by line just because it is so traumatizing, but let's get to it so you can get the idea. MV1 was asked what his earliest memories were of being locked in his bedroom, and he stated that the earliest memories start around the age of 3. The family was living at the omitted address, or 2 Blake Street at the time, and he recalled being hungry, which led him to sneaking out of his room at night to get food or something to drink. And he stated that when the wrappings to the food he ate were eventually discovered, he began to be locked in his room. And he stated at that time it was only during evening hours he recalled drinking water from the toilet at that time, because he was only getting about 2 cups of water a day. That's awful. MV1 then recalled how the family had moved to a different address before preschool. Okay, so I might have been wrong on that. I had said 2 Blake Street before, but I think he had lived somewhere else. And then they moved to 2 Blake Street. And I'm paraphrasing some of this on the arrest affidavit, just FYI, but I will include this in the episode notes so you can read it yourself. MV1 stated that when he was in the 4th grade, he was permanently pulled out of school due to the fact that the school he was attending contacted the Department of Children and Family Services based on what he was doing in school. And he stated by that time in his life, he was so hungry that when he was at school, he would often ask others for their food, steal food, and then eat out of the garbage. Oh, this resulted in DCF responding to the home on 2 occasions where they had Sullivan tell them everything was fine. After the second DCF visit, he was pulled from school by Sullivan. MV1 stated that he was provided worksheets for a short period of time, but the skill level never advanced and no one was teaching him anything. This pisses me off. So this kid couldn't even get an education, which is everybody's right. Everyone in America has the right to an education. And this woman also deprived him of that among his freaking humanity. She really drives me insane. All right, let's go back to this. And I'm obviously very angry at everything here, but it drives me crazy. It's like this kid, he was 11, 12 years old when she started doing this to him. And the fact that he has memories of being so hungry before that, I'm just, my blood is boiling. Okay. MV1 stated that he always had a lock outside of his door. It evolved from a chain lock to a padlock and eventually a slide bolt lock. Not only did he demonstrate to Petchy how it operated, but the lock was also observed from photos obtained from search and seizure warrants executed at the residence. MV1 added that when he first moved to this address, he was in an actual bedroom, but was then moved to a smaller, quote unquote, room. This area was observed during the execution of the search warrant and can be described as a back storage space on the 2nd floor residence. MV1 stated that he was only there for a short period of time, eventually being moved to a smaller room. Smaller than that, my gosh. This is where he had been since the age of 12. This space that MV1 was locked in was a back storage space that measured approximately 8 feet by 9 feet. The space also had angled ceilings, making the space that much smaller. So I'm picturing, I had a room like this when I was a kid. We had kind of angled ceilings and you couldn't stand up straight without bumping your head. It was horrible. Speaking with this blank doctor, she stated that MV1 stated during their conversation that the space had no heat in the winter and no air conditioning in the summer. MV1 stated that once he was pulled from school, his weekday routine and captivity became brutally consistent for the rest of his life. He said he would typically go to sleep around 7:30 p.m., depending on what season it was. He stated that he would wake up around 3 to 4:30 a.m., and then he would be awake for the rest of the whole day and the night, noting that he didn't sleep well. He was let out of his room for a limited time in the morning around 8 a.m. He stated that he was tasked to complete several chores in the house, which may take him between 15 minutes and 2 hours, depending on what he had to do. From there, typically late in the morning, he was brought back to his room where he was locked there for the remainder of the day and through overnight hours until it was time to get out and do chores again the following day. When asked how often this routine was, he stated nearly every day. MV1 stated that on occasion, he was let out in the early evening hours. He stated that there were times where he would be locked in his room for a whole day, equating to 24 straight hours in that little shithole. Excuse me. I added the shithole part. MV1 stated that On weekends, he would be let out of his room for longer periods of time by his father. Okay. Interesting. MB1 stated that while Sullivan took his sisters to events and to see friends, his father would allow him to come out and watch television with him. There was also times that his father would let him go outside, work in the yard. Okay, that's kind of what I had thought. Like his dad wasn't in on it, but he was. I guess he was. This is interesting. When discussing his father dying, he stated that the captivity and restraint got even worse. So yeah, that's what I had imagined. His dad was kind of out of it at that point. MB1 stated that it got to a point when the only time he would ever be out of the house once his father died was to let the family dog in and out of the property, and that it was only 1 minute a day. So essentially, by that point, he was locked in his room between 22 and 24 hours a day. MB1 stated that he was provided up to 2 sandwiches a day. They were typically deli meats, peanut butter, the occasional tuna or egg salad. He describes his food becoming less and less over time. When asked if he was hungry every day, he stated this, all day, every day, my entire life. Along with the limited food supply, he stated that he had the equivalent of about 2 small bottles of water per day. He pointed to these mini bottles of water that were on the table during the interview. When the detectives asked MB1 why he never spoke with anyone about his experience, he stated that he wanted to, but there was the constant threat of longer lockdowns and further diminished food. MB1 describes a life of being mentally conditioned by Sullivan. He stated that the threat was that he would not see the light of day ever if he told anyone, knowing that he had little time out of his room to that point. It was just not something that he wanted to risk. He also stated that once he discovered a gun while he was cleaning, and this added to his fears of being hurt. And, I also want to add, I was going to talk about this at the end, but he was 11 or 12 years old when he started getting locked up like that. And I feel like his mentality must have stayed kind of childlike, where was I? MB1 stated that Sullivan would constantly lead him to believe that she was going to start unlocking his door and letting him out, but that she needed to see that she could trust him. Okay. So he was trying to kind of make her happy, earn his trust. And then he stated that, yeah, this never happened. So he also stated or described the evolution of his bathroom use. When he was a young child, he was only being locked in the room during overnight hours, and a training potty chair was left in his room to use. Once he reached his teenage years and then into his adult years, oh my goodness, he was forced to use bottles and newspaper to dispose of his waste. He described how after he urinated into a bottle, he would have to then funnel it into a tube he created with series of straws and then guide those straws through a hole in the window to empty it. Ugh. He continued by describing how he defecated. He said he placed newspaper on the ground and squatted over it to relieve himself. Then he would roll the paper up, tie it with a string he unraveled from old t-shirts, and then eventually bring it to the kitchen garbage when he was let out to do chores. Oh my goodness. Not only was he emaciated, but it was clearly an issue with his hygiene that was occurring. He remembered telling the officer, oh my gosh, he had not bathed in a year or two. When he asked about his bathing habits, MB1 stated that when he was still in school, he would get bathed about every other night. But once he was pulled from school, he stated that his bathing would become less and less, which ultimately led him to having to clean himself in his room. So he explained that the 1 bottle of water he would have, or 2, he would use one to clean himself. He would save a portion of this drinking water, but he was not provided any kind of soap. He just had some men's cologne in his room. And he also stated that Kimberly Sullivan would cut his hair, but he had not had a haircut in 3 years. Let me see what else is here. He talks about when he was able to watch TV, he would watch basketball. He describes listening to local radio stations. He was able to learn about NASCAR and Yukon basketball by these radio stations. He let them know that his formal education was concluded in the 4th grade, but he was provided approximately 4 books every year, and he also had a dictionary, so he would read these books and look up words in the dictionary that he would come across that he didn't know. He said he was never allowed to have friends. Oh my goodness. And this is where he talks about his last costume being a firefighter. He stated that his sisters were allowed to have friends, but the friends were not allowed over to the house because he was their secret. Anyone who did come over to the house, he was told not to make a sound. When asked about sexual abuse or physical abuse, he stated there was no SA, and he recalled only one instance where he was abused physically, and he said it was in 2005, being home alone. There was, I guess he had cut out a piece of wood paneling out of the door, and he stated that he was able to sneak out and make his way out of the house to find food, and he ate food. And when Kimberly Sullivan discovered he made his way out of the room, she went at him and slapped him in the face. And then from that point, he was locked in his room even more. He also told them he hadn't been to a doctor since he was a child. The only medicine he was ever given was aspirin, and he had no dental treatment. Oh my goodness. And I forgot about this. He stated that when he ate, pieces of his teeth would break off. So that is so sad. And then they get to the fire, and he describes it as being a normal day, the day of the fire. He was doing chores, but on this day, he was allowed out to clean Kimberly Sullivan's vehicle. And like every other day, he was given 2 sandwiches and a snack and sent back to his room where he was locked until 7 p.m. that night. And then he stated that night he was let out to try and replace a bulb on a small Christmas tree that was on a breakfast bar or table. But when he couldn't complete changing this light bulb, Kimberly Sullivan sent him back to his room and locked him in. And around 8 p.m. that night, he heard Kimberly Sullivan's bedroom door close, and he thought, okay, same old, same old. He added that he doesn't remember what time it was, but he remembered the choice to set the fire, noting that there wasn't a plan to do so earlier in the day, but he stated that he knew when he set the fire, he would have to let it go or get to a point where Sullivan would not be able to pull it out, and the fire department would have to come. That's interesting. I mean, so I guess he did say, he didn't have this huge plan to set the fire. I just feel like it would have had to have crossed his mind before. I mean, right? What caused this idea to pop into his mind after all this time? I have to wonder. He did state that he got the lighter about a year earlier after his father died. He was allowed some of his deceased father's clothing, and there happened to be a lighter in this old jacket pocket. When asked how he knew the hand sanitizer was flammable, he stated, I read. He stated that he started the fire on the floor by his door and a stack of games. Once he got the fire going, he started to stomp and yell for help. MV1 stated that Sullivan yelled to him, asking what he wanted, and he told her, fire, fire. When she opened the door, she asked what he did, and he told her the radio had malfunctioned. He states at this point, he was out of it, and he collapsed at the top of the stairs, excuse me. And then he stated Sullivan made him get up and go downstairs to wash his face because she didn't want the fire department to know about his appearance. Very guilty. MV1 concluded by stating that he fell to the ground again. Oh, sorry, I missed the part. He said he could hear Sullivan yelling to them to get a screwdriver to get the locks off of the doors when his sister or stepsister and her boyfriend came to the house. That's interesting. Then he went to the kitchen. He hid under the table. Okay. And yeah, we've got more of his medical records from when he was at the hospital. It says that he has wasting syndrome, which has to do with significant unplanned weight loss and the deterioration of muscle mass. Okay. So yeah, this guy is really going through it. It said that he is 5'9" and he weighs 68.7 pounds. I mean, that is literally what a 9-year-old weighs. I think that my daughter weighs a few pounds less than that. That's insane. Yeah, he goes on. I mean, there's a lot more here just about the detectives. I won't get into that, but I think, reading through that was incredibly difficult. It's incredibly frustrating. And, my heart just goes out to this man. And I'm still so curious about his dad. What happened to his dad? What happened in this relationship that his dad did think it was okay to lock him in his bedroom for a period of time? And he didn't really get into how long he was locked in the bedroom. I mean, I guess his dad was complicit in pulling him out of school. I don't understand. I really, really don't. But let me just make sure okay. Before I wrap this up, and again, Kimberly Sullivan is due in court again on April 22nd, I want to kind of talk about the light and the darkness throughout all of this, because there is some, because the town of Waterbury is rallying. Detectives, they made a care package, clothes, books, puzzles, gift bags to give to this man. And this man, when he received these gifts, apparently he smiled like he had never smiled before. And even better, the community in Waterbury has raised over $130,000. And this is through Safe Haven of Greater Waterbury. And this is all for his recovery. So the mayor is helping out. And it's really nice to see that people are rallying behind him, because I feel like this poor guy, he never, ever stood a chance against Kimberly Sullivan. And now he does. Now he's getting the life that he deserves. He's getting the help that he deserves. And hopefully this whole ordeal ends with her behind bars in her own little 8x9 room with a lock on the outside. Truly. I mean, gosh, a man who dressed up as a firefighter at age 12 gets rescued by firefighters at age 32, which is, God, it's so chilling, but also so moving. So, thanks for listening. And if this story hit you like it hit me, please share it, because I think it's important that people are just reminded, if they see something odd, if they see something that doesn't quite make sense, or someone who is acting a little strange and you're afraid to be wrong, who cares? Just be wrong. Do the right thing anyway, because there's a good chance that you might be right and this person needs help. So yeah, even the slightest hint, that could mean you change someone's life. So without being cliche, if you see something, say something. And I'll be back next time with another story that needs to be told. So until then, stay safe, stay curious, and stay vigilant. I'm Lauren Conlin. Because of that 9-dash line. And Ted Cruz said, look, if you're not into geopolitics, you won't notice this. I mean, hello.